They can show a place, a situation. Absolutely. So in different locations, we're going to say something if we have a different location. With a mirror, very interesting. So if we show our reflection, we're showing ourselves. Using the timer, us with iPads, yes. They can guide, so we're going to talk about this, yes. Timing with the timer, with other people, and one person gives the instruction using a webcam from a laptop. Timer, absolutely. There's an application from the laptop where you actually use your cell phone as a remote control. Very good. So you have a lot of ideas. All the ideas I had, you have. So the idea is that here, and put yourself in your students' shoes, you're thinking of options. You're thinking of choices. So if I show you my list, you're going to see here everything you said, with a selfie stick, in a mirror, in a reflective liquid or solid surface. If you take a photo of yourself, of your reflection in a lake, in the snow, of your shadow in the snow, it is you. But you're saying something different, not showing yourself from on. Maybe you're saying that you don't want to show your face. You want to show your reflection. It's okay, but not your face. Maybe that says that you're shy. Maybe that says that you're not in a good time where you want to show yourself and expose yourself. So you're saying a lot of things depending on how you take your selfie. With a timer, with a remote control. Here, there's one about by someone else. And this is very important. Sometimes you have to adapt the rules to give more choices. And again, it is all about options for our students. Options to show how unique they are. So a lot of students always ask, what if someone else takes the photograph? What if someone else takes my portrait? And we agree that on only one condition, it's okay. So if the student who's going to have his or her selfie taken, in that case, portrait, gives the instruction, the perfect instruction, will say everything that will be in the frame, how the photograph will be composed. If I say, for example, I want to be standing in front of the window with the light coming from behind me, I want my waist to be at the bottom of the frame. I do not want my legs to be in the photograph. I do not want to be looking at the camera. If I give all of those very specific instructions, but someone else pushes the button, we will say it's a selfie because I made the decisions. I was in control. I decided everything. So in that case, we discuss with the students and they understand the reasoning behind that little exception. But doing this process with the students and having them think about options is a very important step. So then what do we do? I give my students a few, actually only 3, very basic composition tips. I talk about angles, diagonals, and rule of thirds. And again, it's to give them options. So angles, if you look at the circle on the left, it's a photograph of something. What do you think is photographed here? If you can write this in the chat box. A wheel? No, it's not. A button? No. A wheel again? No. A pin? No. Pottery? No. So this is great. You're a knob. Yes, it is a doorknob. So it's an extreme close-up of a doorknob. So what you actually move with your hand to open the door. You can see here there's a slot for the key. This is an extreme close-up of a doorknob. And so playing with the angles, showing a doorknob with an extreme close-up, I make you think. I make you wonder, what is this? What are you trying to say? What is the meaning of that particular composition? And so playing with angles, taking photographs from above, from below, from different angles than the human eye, will make people think and reflect. And we're already achieving our goal of showing how different and unique we are, because we're taking photographs that will make you think. So angles are very important. Diagonals, same thing. If I take a photograph of a building from my perspective, so if I look up at the skyscraper and take a photograph, putting the camera at the same level as my eyes, there will be no surprise. But if I use diagonals and I use an angle that is from a diagonal, like what you can see on the left, it gives a different feel. You wonder from where I took this photograph. You wonder, maybe it gives a sense of like a smooth line and it's less strict. So it gives a different feel. Again, the idea is to make people think. And finally, what I talk about when I talk about composition, how you create your photograph, I just briefly describe the rule of thirds to students. The idea is that this is a concept that was discovered during the Renaissance and that painters used for centuries and keep using, of course. Technically, humanly, whenever we see an image, the human eye has the tendency to divide that image into thirds, and the intersections of the thirds are what our eyes are drawn to instantly. So here, the green dots. So I explain this to students and tell them that it's very important to really think about what they want to place in those 4 dots. Is it going to be their eyes or the background or their hand, whatever it is, but they have to think that this is the first thing that people will look at instinctively. So the rule of third is an important one. Now the big question is how to be creative. So I'm passionate about photography, and I've talked to a lot of photographers, and every single photographer I've talked to has told me that to become a good photographer, you have to see as many photographs as possible. Because no one is creative without nurturing themselves from other people's work. So the idea is to see as much as possible, kind of digest it all, and then create your own. So I took that piece of advice from my photographer friends, and I bring it into the classroom. So I actually bring famous self-portraits to students and ask them this question. So, and we're going to do it now briefly because like I want you to see how it feels again. But in the classroom, I would bring 3, 4, 5 self-portraits, and I would have a discussion with my students. And the question I ask is always the same. What do you learn about the subject's work? What do you learn about the subject work, personality, environment, and mood, or interests also, from the photograph, from the self-portrait? So I'm going to show you one photograph right now, one self-portrait, and think about those points: work, personality, environment, mood. And you can write your answers in the chat box. So he's a stylist, okay. He's a hairstylist, okay. He looks serious. He's egocentric. He's fierce, okay. Uptight, middle-aged, angry, a bit vain, smart, confident, annoyed. What do you think his job is? Creative. He's an artist, okay. Hairstylist. Italian, okay. Designer. Okay, he's a singer. But something with style, right? He's a teacher. No, he's not. Okay, so I'm going to tell you the answer. But you all talked about his style, his pose. He looks fierce. He looks in control. You talked about what he wears, his fashion, like he's pretty fashionable. He's actually a fashion photographer. So Richard Avedon was a really famous American fashion photographer. And so from the way he decided to show himself, you can really tell this. And everything you said about like looking fierce, in control, his style, you talked about a hairdresser, you talked about an artist, everything, all of those aspects are incorporated in fashion photography. A fashion photographer has to tell the subject how to pose, what to wear, how to move or not. The light is going to be very important. So here, if you look at the background, there's no background. So the most important here is the person. You see nothing else. The person, the clothing, there's no choice. Like there's a white background, so you don't see, you don't have options. So it's look at me or look at me. That's the only way. That's the only option. And so he looks arrogant. In a way, a fashion photographer has to be a little bit of a control freak because every single detail has to be perfect. The way the belt is basically closed, the way like you see his glasses in his pocket, you see the movement, everything is controlled. So here, all you could say about the photograph reflects the person. And so doing this with the students, you start making them think about what they're going to show and how people are going to react about what they see when they show themselves. So just to make my point, I will show you another self-portrait. And same thing, if you can react, your instinctive reaction about their work, personality, environment, mood. He's a photographer? Yes. He is hiding behind the camera. This is a very good point. He is happy. Does he remind you of some character? He looks a bit shy, on task. He likes smoking. What about his appearance? Mafia style, I like that. Yeah, the suit, the cigar. If you look at the flash, that's a really big flash. And that's a flash that people used to use back in the days in the 50s, 60s to photograph at night. It would actually make an explosion and photograph at night. So again, everything you said reflects the reality. Luigi was also a photographer, but he had a very peculiar job. He lived in New York City, drove a car at night in the streets of New York City. He was connected to the police radio. And whenever a crime was happening, he would listen to the information, drive straight to the place where the crime had happened, and take photographs. So he photographed exclusively at night, and he photographed crime scenes, people being arrested. So you can see like that mafia style that someone talked about reflects in his very particular job. So here you see, I showed you two self-portraits of two photographers. And if you do this with your students, try and show more if you have time. But the idea is that if I told you I'm going to show you two self-portraits of two famous photographers, probably you think, oh, they're going to be the same. Like if I show you two pictures, two self-portraits of students, of two 15-year-olds, they're going to be the same. They're going to be the two duck faces. And no, here you see that seeing the photographs, each photograph shows how unique the person is. And so if you have your students discuss and realize this in that discussion process, then we'll start seeing all the options that they have to show themselves. So in a way, you can end up the discussion and this process of self-discovery with a brainstorming. I usually give a handout to my students and I have them think for 5 minutes and take private notes. Basically, how do you want to show how unique you are? Do you want to use features? Do you want to use a specific environment? If a student is bookworm, spends his life in the library, he's not going to take a picture in the basketball fields. He's not going to take a picture playing soccer. He's going to take pictures in the library. Features, if a student is bold, maybe that boldness is something that was difficult to accept and then he accepted it and is proud of it. So maybe he wants to show that. You see how every single individual will have to think about themselves to show what they want to show and what is important to them. And I put story in here because you remember at the beginning I talked about showing or creating a better self. Some students will not want to talk about themselves, to show themselves. They will want to create a fictional story, and that's perfectly fine. But the idea is to give all the options to students. So now that you have done all the thinking process and your students have basically brought their selfies to the classroom, you can print them on cheap paper so that it doesn't cost a lot. You can print them on paper, on like a printing paper. Now what do we do with those selfies? So here comes my third part, where I'm going to briefly talk about activities that you can use with your students' selfies. So the first one, of course, would be speaking activities. There's a lot you can do with photographs. I just made you talk on chat about 2 photographs. You had a lot of things to say. You created a world for those 2 people. And students will do the same, even more when it's about themselves. So you can use higher order questions following Bloom's taxonomy. You can make your students describe, analyze, compare, infer, create. So if I give you examples of what my students did, actually. So here, very briefly, I have a self-portrait by Camila, a student here in Salta in Argentina. And you could ask students to describe, what do you see? This is far from the duck face. Camila decided to show herself this way. What do you see? How do you describe this photograph? I wish I could make you do it in the chat box, but I'm running out of time already, so I'm going to show you other photographs. I want you to see as much as possible. Another question here, an inference question. Why did Monica decide to take this photograph? So here, after describing the photograph, the background, the foreground, why this decision? Why this choice? What was she trying to say? So here, an inference question. Here, a creation. You can ask students to create. Write a news story that might be used with this photograph. This is quite a surprising photograph from a student. Actually, Grace was a very studious student, and that was not her persona at all. So she created a fictional character here. That's a lot to say. Okay, so higher order ranking questions. Then second activity, you could have a gallery walk. And I love this activity because it allows everyone to see their classmates' photographs while practicing their writing, speaking, and teamwork. So how does this work? Once you have all your photographs, you paste them around the classroom. And under each photograph, you will paste a piece of white paper. Then you divide your class into groups of 3, 4 maximum. And each group will get a different colored pen. Then you set up your timer and you give 10 minutes to students to go from photograph to photograph and to write descriptive sentences under each photograph. So they have to talk to each other to make sure that their sentences are correct, and then they move on. And the group with the most correct descriptive statements or sentences wins. That's a great way to get your students to work in teams, to practice their writing, and at the same time to see everyone's photograph. So you gain a lot of time instead of just showing the photograph. That's another activity you could do. The description game. This one is to work in pairs, and you give one selfie to each pair. And again, with a timer, you will divide your class into, each pair will have a student A and student B. So in the first round, student A will describe the picture during 1 minute using only positive sentences. Student B will be listening, looking at the photograph. In round number 2, 1 minute again, student B will repeat the same sentences but in the negative form, or in the transforming the statements into questions or putting them in the past, whatever you're studying in terms of grammar at the moment. So this is a great oral activity that will help with grammar as well, and that will get students to basically listen to each other, communicate with the visual help of the selfie. I really recommend this activity. It's really fun. Okay, so Then I have quite a few writing activities. I just listed them here. Again, in the handout, you will have more specifics. But you could have your students writing acronym poems, descriptive text, Facebook comments. If you do this, make sure to have a closed Facebook account where your students can share and no one else sees for security reasons, of course. You can have your students write bio poems, play with body maps, which helps your students actually thinking about themselves and their goals and what they want to do, what they want to show. Dialogues, short autobiographical stories, fictional stories, lots of writing activities. Again, it will all be in the handout, very detailed. I don't want to keep you too long. This is just an example of an acronym poem from Helen. For lower level here, the student decided to write her name and adjectives to describe herself. And then the final activity, actually it's a software that I want to share, is called photobabel.com. So it's a free software, very simple, very easy to use, and the idea is that you can upload a photograph and record yourself for 1 minute, and out of this recording and the photograph, you will get one link that you can share by email, WhatsApp, whatever it is. So if I show you how it looks like, I have one here. This is Photobabel. This is what it looks like. You have an account. It's free. It's entirely free. Just for you to see, this is a photograph of a student called Vera. Okay, so I'm going to stop because I'm running late. But you see here, I had my friend Pablo, who is not an English student, who studied English a long time ago and never spoke English again, record himself reading a text from Vera, another student. And there's something quite extraordinary that happens when you record yourself. It sounds strange to hear yourself when it sounds wrong. And so what happened is that Pablo recorded himself again and again and again and again until it sounded good for him, until he was happy with the results. So, and if you think about it, it's 1 minute. So you have the photograph of your student and you have the 1 minute recording. If you have 60 students, 60 minutes to evaluate and assess their pronunciation, oral, English, etc. So great software. So just to conclude, I just want to express that really using selfies in the classroom will increase your students' motivation. But you will also have the very satisfying task of enhancing your students' creativity and helping them in that process knowing about themselves and about who they want to be, who they want to show to the world. And most importantly, there are endless possibilities. I talked about selfies, but you can make this about photography, not about selfie only. Everyone has to follow a textbook. Each textbook has chapters, going to school, vacations, introducing yourself, jobs. Why not asking your students to bring photographs to illustrate every single chapter of your book? They will be extremely motivated to talk about something that is real to them, that makes sense and that connects to their real life. So I'm done here. Thank you so much for attending this webinar, and I'm going to give the screen back to Maggie now.
Thank you, Mathilde. If you have a couple more minutes, there are just a few questions that came up. I can switch back over. One of them was if you could just quickly explain the Photobabel website again and what that does.
Okay, so for the Photobabel website, you have to download, you have to create an account, and it's free. So you go on photobabel.com, create your account. So each student will have to create an account. Then you upload a photograph to your account. So you take your selfie with your cell phone, upload it to your Photobabel account, and you will have an option with a little microphone to record yourself. So you can record yourself talking about your photograph or talking about yourself, whatever you want to talk about. And once the minute is done, once you recorded yourself for 1 minute, you actually have a link. So if I go back to Babel here, you can see paste this link into an email or instant message. So here you can see that you have a link that you can share with your teacher or classmates, whoever. So this is how it works. You record yourself, you upload your photograph, and you share the link with whoever you want.
Okay. And then Luce had one more question too about if you have any suggestions for teachers who work in schools where they're not allowed to have cameras or cell phones.
Okay, so you can actually define a time for cell phone usage. So you can talk to the administrator and explain that you have a project with photography. And of course, don't do it without talking to the administration, but asking for a time slot where maybe on Thursday from 3 to 4, our students are going to use cell phones because we're going to use this in the classroom. So I think communicating with the administration and blocking one time specifically for the use of cell phone might work.
Okay, and then Yenny has a question of, do you think that this is a good activity for large classes?
I think it would work because you can, if you look at the activities I mentioned, some are for big groups, smaller groups, pair work, individual work. So if you try and divide your big group into smaller groups, use the activities that work with smaller groups. Yeah, I think it will work.
Okay. And with another question from Hilda asks, is it safe for students to post the photos and share them? I believe that's referring to the website, the Babel website, going back.
So what you can do to make it safer is to get students to sign a waiver, also to cover yourself in a way, but try and keep as many closed groups as possible. I like to use closed Facebook accounts with my students, closed Facebook groups, so that this way parents do not get worried and it's everything under control. So I would keep it in a closed group.
Okay, and then there's a couple questions on recommended time, how long you think this activity takes, how much time you would dedicate to it.
Okay, so if we think of the speaking activities, like keep them under 15 minutes maximum, because then it gets old and students get bored, even if they're talking about themselves. But writing activities could be a bit longer, but speaking activity, 10-15 minutes maximum.
Okay, and then I think the last question, would it be possible to do this kind of work in a longer session, like 45 minutes?
Yeah, I think if you have several activities and you do not use only one activity for 45 minutes, it's totally doable, yes. Play with smaller group, bigger group, individual activities, and 45 minutes, you will not see the time pass.
Okay. Well, a lot of people saying congratulations, great idea. So I think a lot of teachers will be using selfies in their classroom. So thank you, Mathilde, for the ideas.
Thank you for signing up and for listening.
Yeah,
and please share your photographs. I want to see your students' work. If you see something phenomenal, share your ideas.
Excellent. All right. Well, thank you again. Next month, we will be back with another webinar. We will be joined by Ta. She is a fellow in Mexico. She will be talking about 4 ways to use speed dating in the classroom. And that will be on Thursday, January 21st, and that is 3 o'clock Peru time. So mark your calendars and save the date. Again, if you want to join us but you're not on our mailing list, you can send us an email at reloandes@state.gov. You can also find us on Facebook and Twitter, and recordings of the webinars are saved and uploaded to YouTube, so you can check us out using any of those methods. All right, so with that, thank you for joining us, and we hope to see you in January. So happy holidays and happy New Year to everyone. Bye.